This is the globalist threat to sovereignty, the WHO and the UN climate agenda. Please welcome author of Winning Space, How America Remains a Superpower, Brandon Weichert. Executive Director of American Stewards of Liberty, Margaret Byfield. Executive Chairman, Center for Security Policy, Frank Gaffney. And your moderator, CPAC Vice Chairman and host of The Bill Walton Show, Bill Walton.
Let's go. Yeah. Well, the theme of this year's conference is where globalism goes to die. We have a lot of work to do. The global governance agenda is wrapped in obfuscation and secrecy. It has to be, because the global governance agenda is at its core, at its core a degrowth agenda. It's an anti-human freedom agenda. It's an anti-property rights agenda. It's fundamentally anti-human. In this panel, we want to share a couple of the latest instances of their power grab and some of the things we've got to face down. One is the UN's climate change agenda, and the other, and you're seeing the badges around the conference, the World Health Organization's latest attempt at a massive power grab. I'll describe briefly what the WHO threat is about, just tip of the iceberg. Don't have enough time to get into it completely. And then Margaret, Brandon, and Frank will amplify some of the other areas and some action steps. The WHO. At a meeting of the World Health Assembly starting in May 27th, just 90 days from now, the World Health Organization will likely adopt two agreements. One, amending the existing international health regulations. The other, a new so-called pandemic agreement, ostensibly intended to prevent and guide responses to future pandemics. The new agreements would require the U.S. and the 195 other supposedly sovereign states to give the WHO Director General the authority, unilaterally, to declare public health emergencies of international concern anywhere in the world and dictate what must be done by nations in response. Amen. The WHO director would be able to declare a public health emergency or the potential for one without meeting any specific criteria. Exactly. WHO edicts would become compulsory. The proposed amendments replace the word may with shall in over 100 places. In addition, the word non-binding has been deleted to make the recommendations of the WHO binding. Some of the directives that the Director General in his wisdom could issue could include quarantines, masks, mandatory testing, vaccination requirements, lockdowns, and border closures with vaccine passports. This has the active support of the World Economic Forum, the European Union, the World Bank, Bill Gates, Big Pharma, the Chinese Communist Party, and the Biden administration. I might add, if you don't already know this, the Gates Foundation is the second largest contributor to the WHO. And it also has the Biden administration's strong support, which means they're driving this to say that they're not going to characterize these as treaties, which means they don't have to receive U.S. Senate confirmation or approval. So they're bypassing it, and they're going to make this thing happen in late May if we don't stop it. And of course, unless the United States withdraws from the World Health Organization, it's going to be bound by whatever the majority of the members decide, majority of the members agree upon. So with that set up, Margaret, would you tell us a little bit more about what the United Nations is up to and your work there?
So this whole agenda is about controlling the people, and that's what we're seeing with the WHO. But one of the key ways that they are able to do this is by controlling our land. We have to understand how important it is that we, the people in America, own our property. And America was founded on the idea that the way we would control our government is if the people owned the land. And that's the key thing that the Biden administration is doing right now. 6 days into his administration, he launched a program called 30 by 30. 30 by 30 is an international agenda to permanently protect 30% of the world's lands and oceans by 2030. That means in America, he is trying to permanently protect 30% of our nation off limits to human use. And he has been doing this since 6 days into his administration. We jumped on this campaign. That's what we do. We're a property rights organization, and we've been fighting it for the last 3 years. However, in September of 2021, as we were tracking this issue, we also picked up another issue that is a tandem issue and really the next step in this agenda. We picked up an item where a group called Intrinsic Exchange Group, which is funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, partnered with the New York Stock Exchange to create something called natural asset accounts. And what they are doing with these accounts, or natural asset companies, what they are doing with these companies is they are trying to create an investment vehicle where ecosystem services, and I know that's a big term, ecosystem services could be enrolled into these natural capital accounts, and the world elites could then profit from those. What would be enrolled in these accounts? The ecosystem services from things like our national parks, wilderness areas, conservation easements on private lands, and they would take these ecosystem services, which includes something that is even more diabolical. They're trying to create a new property right. They are trying to make things like pollination and photosynthesis a property right, which they will own via its enrollment through these natural asset companies. This is absolutely diabolical. Nobody has a right to own these things. These are things that are not property that all of us need. But that is what they were doing with the natural asset companies. On October 4th of last year, the SEC, Security Exchange Commission, issued a proposed rule to approve these in 45 days. Thankfully, we were able to jump on this, and we enlisted the help of Frank and Bill, and we got Congress alerted to what was going on, and were able to get a number of key delays so that on January 18th, the New York Stock Exchange pulled out and pulled their application to do this. So this fight isn't over. We're still fighting 30 by 30. And there's a lot of these other agendas. But here's the thing I want the audience to understand. If the one takeaway you take away from this is, number one, we can beat these things. But number two, here's what I want you to remember why property right is so important to everything we do. And that's this. Either you have the right to own property or you are property.
Amen. Brandon?
Well, and building off those excellent remarks, I think that the self-described progressives really should be called what they are, which is Marxists or communists.
Yep.
Amen. And the key to understanding the Marxist cabal's threat to America is through their organizational capability. If you take a small cadre of people and you give them superior organizational abilities with a shared goal, they will be able to defeat a larger group that's not disciplined. This is why this group is so important here, because you are forming the organizational backbone of our movement. But we've seen now with the World Health Organization, the United Nations, and other internationalist bodies that they have been co-opted by the Marxist globalist cabal, and they are using the tools and capabilities of these organizations that were technically initially founded after the Second World War to help protect us in the Cold War from the communists. They've been co-opted by the communists. And they are now using all of the sovereignty that we've ceded to these groups to basically try to destroy the United States. But they're not working alone. And we saw this during 2020 when the pandemic that was released from Wuhan came out. And basically, the World Health Organization went from being a pandemic response group to becoming a apologist for Xi Jinping's China. And this is a critical point to understand. The World Health Organization, all these internationalist groups have been not only co-opted by communists in our own country, but they have been co-opted by the Chinese. The Chinese have been spending tens of billions of dollars to basically buy influence in groups like the World Health Organization so that they can fundamentally change the United States by using the power of the World Health Organization to impose Chinese-style communist diktats upon us using our own elites to do it. And that is why you had, in the United States in 2020, lockdowns. You had this movement among our elites to basically replicate the policies of China, these draconian, anti-freedom, anti-human policies. Right now, they are currently attempting to pass through the Global Pandemic Treaty, which, if they can get that through, it will give the World Health Organization stunning amount of power to completely eradicate our freedoms here in the United States. So even the Human Rights Watch, I was researching this, even Human Rights Watch, very liberal organization, has said that it is a fundamental imposition upon individual rights, and it serves corporate and elite interests over the rights of the individuals. And if you lose Human Rights Watch on the left, you've pretty much shown how radical you truly are. And so my solution, and this is going to tee up Frank for some great comments, but my solution here is, if there is a free and fair election this year, Donald Trump will win. And if Donald Trump wins, I would beg him to please pull us out of the World Health Organization. But not just the World Health Organization, every internationalist group, especially the United Nations. And to bring back America's sovereignty so that we, the people, can do what's in our best interest, not the interests of the global communist conspiracy. Thank you.
Amen. Great. Frank Gaffney.
Well, thank you. Much of what needs to be said about the World Health Organization has been said. Let me just compliment what Bill and Brandon in particular have mentioned to you already. The theme of this meeting, and I want to thank God for it, and Matt Schlapp, and Bill Walton, is where globalism goes to die. It will not die of natural causes, ladies and gentlemen. It must be killed. And if it is to be killed, it has to start somewhere. This is the battle where it starts, to prevent the World Health Organization, an organization that, as you may have noticed, during the recent unpleasantness of the COVID pandemic, demonstrated not only its incompetence, but its malfeasance, its subordination, as Brandon has just said, to the Chinese Communist Party and its line. It was as a result of this advisory body telling us that the virus came out of nature, a wet lab, that it was not really very communicable, and that, among other things, what we needed to do in response to it was what's come to be called the China model, the lockdowns, the social distancing, the mandates of various kinds, including jabs with so-called vaccines, as you'll hear from Dr. Malone and others today, that are actually more dangerous than the disease itself. And as Brandon said, that's what you can expect if these entities, these individuals like Tedros Ghebreyesus, the Director General, has the authority going forward, as Bill said, to not only declare what is a public health emergency of international concern, but to tell us what we must do about it. Now, here's the kicker. If it were just that they will screw up the next pandemic, especially if it's brought to us by their masters, the Chinese Communist Party, it would be bad enough.
But Bill sort of alluded to this. What if Tedros Ghebreyesus, in his infinite wisdom, decides that, climate change is a public health emergency of international concern, or maybe reproductive rights, or maybe immigration, or maybe Americans, gun violence. Well, guess what? If this treaty, and by the way, there's another parallel set of agreements that are going to amend the international health regulations. All of this, by the way, is being done in secret, basically. You now know more than just about anybody in the United States Congress about what the heck is going on here. And that is a travesty, ladies and gentlemen, because, as among others, Margaret has said nothing less than entrusting public health policy for this country to an unelected, unaccountable, communist, international bureaucrat who made a hash-up of what he was assigned to do when he just had advisory power. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. In 3 months, all other things being equal, these agreements will be approved. Brenna's right. If Donald Trump gets to office, and I hope we'll hear from him about this today, he's already said he's going to get us out of the World Health Organization. But what happens if 6 months before he gets the chance, hopefully, they start locking these things in, locking in the responsibility to determine when we have a public health emergency and what we must do about it, locking in digital IDs for every human being on the planet, which will not only be used for health surveillance, but also to monitor everything else about you. The social credit system of the Chinese Communist Party, in short. Or how about this? Institutionalizing, under the direction of the World Health Organization, censorship. I mean, there's a lot of that going on as it is. But what happens if we now have a new dictator for the globe saying any misinformation or malinformation or disinformation, according to their lights, must be censored?
It's in the documents, Frank.
It's in the documents.
They're right in
given
there.
that authority if they have these agreements approved. So my appeal to you, ladies and gentlemen, before Donald Trump gets a chance to do something about this, help us defeat these agreements. The problem is, my last point, the problem is the process is rigged. Not only rigged because they're not telling you what's going on, you're not supposed to know, let alone have a say, let alone approve it. What they're going to try to do is blow this through. They don't think they have to bring it to the United States Senate. Ronald Johnson, senator from Wisconsin, great American, tried to get the Senate to agree that anything they came up with had to come to them in the Senate for their advice and consent. You know what happened? 49 senators said, we're not going to do our job. Only 47 said we would. So here's the point. We may not be able to stop this treaty, but what we can do, with your help, the help of the people who represent you, the people here at CPAC who, with Bill's help, made it the policy of this entity. The CPAC board said, getting us out of the World Health Organization, departing from it, defunding it, and defanging it is our object. Let's do it. We need your help.
We're just about out of time, but look, we want to put a bright light on these cockroaches. The Biden administration is driving this, and it's in the Department of Office of Global Affairs at HHS that's doing this all in secret. And as Frank pointed out, the only way we can stop it now, the Biden administration is all in, is to shine a bright light on this, make our congressmen, and especially our senators, feel their responsibility to step up here and declare this a treaty that has to be approved by them. And Margaret, I wish you'd comment on one thing. The World Health Organization is also talking about something, One Health, which means ecosystems, plants, animals, and by the way, people as well. We don't have too much time, but is there?
Yeah, what they would have done is, what they're looking to do is create something called biodiversity credits. So these ecosystem services, we'd all be credited plus or minus how much of it we used, according to their math. And it's the
Social
UN
credit system.
Yeah, it's a UN accounting system, which is the ones that is going to track these ecosystem credits and set the value for these. So it's really, I mean, what they were doing through these natural asset companies was really innocuous. The other key thing that I think people need to know about these natural asset companies is that the rule invited foreign investment into these companies, meaning China's sovereign wealth funds could invest in these natural asset companies, have complete control over our natural resources, and bring our nation to its knees, as you said, without a fight.
Without a fight.
If we had not stopped these natural asset companies, that would have gone in place on November 18th of last year.
They're going to keep trying.
They are going to keep
They don't
trying.
stop.
This is going to be
Yes.
coming back. It doesn't need to be public. It could be private equity, which is my old world. And by the way, this natural asset category, UN's got accounting to make this unused property worth trillions and trillions of dollars. You can bet with certainty that Goldman Sachs is going to be in there trying to make a market in this. So
Wall Street.
shine a light on this. We've got to wrap it up.
Thank you.
Thank you
All right,
all.
guys.
God
Thanks.
bless.
Thank you all.
It's good.